This morning in our series On the Money, we're navigating finances in relationships. So according to a recent study, 45% of couples argue about money. 25% say it's their greatest relationship challenge. So how do we manage cash and keep the peace? Well, here to help is CNBC Power Lunch anchor Kelly Evans. Kelly, good to see you.
It's good to see you, too.
Okay, so it's a loaded topic. We've been taught it's kind of impolite to talk about money. So how do you get that conversation started with your significant other?
Well, it's what you said, Al. I mean, so many people fight about this. When you've got half of couples fighting about it and a quarter of them saying it's their biggest issue, you have to talk about it or else you're going to end up fighting about it.
Yeah.
So being transparent about debt, that might be a good place to start. This is the ticking time bomb, right? These are the things that you kind of have to sort out together to make sure that you're on the same page. Paying that down, that's maybe a good way to start developing a plan. And again, this gets us into this whole larger discussion. How do you divide responsibilities? Should you even divide accounts? And when you divide responsibilities, it's kind of even that day-to-day stuff where the email comes in and it says the bill is due, and it's like, who's going to be the point person about that? So figuring out, who's the detail-oriented person, who's the more big picture one, and playing to everybody's natural strengths.
All right, great.
Yeah.
So, Kelly, when it comes to managing those finances, there are a few different ways to go about it. Go through those with us.
Okay, you can do joint everything. This is still like the most popular, most common account. About 55% of couples do this, according to Bankrate.
Just put everything in one pot.
And it's simple, right? That's the advantage. You kind of know everything's in one place, and it's very straightforward, and we all kind of know what each other is doing, which some could say is a little bit of a drawback. All separate, about a quarter of people do this. Millennial couples, it's becoming more common. Maybe they're used to having their own accounts, and so they just kind of keep it that way. And they just decide, who pays for which thing, and for a lot of people that feels normal and natural to them.
Okay. Or you could do a mix of both.
You can. This is a newer option. It's gaining in popularity. It's the yours, mine, ours idea. So that joint account could be where you pay for the mortgage. It could be, funding that 529. It could even just be planning for special trips and vacations where you feel like, okay, that's the special pot of money and not just the everyday things we have to deal with.
Now, let's say you're getting into, a joint venture with a sibling or a friend. How do you handle finances in that situation?
Look, you want a business account if it's really kind of venturing into business territory. And when you think about who should be in charge of that, remember, think about what businesses do, right? They often divide these roles. There's the CEO who does like the big picture stuff. Then there's the CFO who's a little bit more detail and budget focused. And I think a lot of families can use that as an analogy, and a lot of business partners should think about that as well. Who's the big picture kind of strategy one, and who's the one who really likes to do more of the nitty gritty? And that's who should at least have primary responsibility, even if you're both sharing it.
Okay.
Kelly, come on over. Let's talk about potential bumps in the road, because you want to be prepared for those.
Yes.
And you maintain you've got some strategies for dealing with a few of these. Let's start with job loss.
So here's one to think about. When you say separate accounts, sounds straightforward. It's something that people have been doing. But when one person faces that job or income loss, it can get a little awkward. Suddenly the balance of power shifts, and you have to figure out who's going to pick up the slack to pay those bills that maybe the one person was used to paying. These kinds of events can also be a time to reconsider whether a strategy that maybe worked for you at the first is still the one you kind of want to stick with forever.
Financial secrecy, what's that?
Some call it financial infidelity.
Oh.
And listen, it can be as traumatic as real infidelity. If someone's hiding something from you, if you thought he's placing a few sports bets and all of a sudden it develops into something bigger, or hey, I thought these were just a few Amazon boxes showing up, but there's a lot of spending going on that I didn't know about. So again, this is where the open communication comes in, especially if you don't have everything all in one place. Or even realizing whatever arrangement you picked, did that lead you to things that were not ideal, in the first place?
It's interesting because my wife and I have actually started having some conversations about this last one, aging parents.
Yeah, a tough one. So one practical thing to think about is, have you ever checked in with your parents to say, hey, who are your beneficiaries? Is it me? Is it us?
And if it's not you, then you're like, yeah, we're putting you in a home now.
Like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What do I need to know? And what are the financial resources, right? Even if you wanted to jokingly do that. I mean, it's really, really expensive. So does that fall to you? Does that fall to a sibling? What are the expectations about managing that?
Yeah. We haven't resolved it, but we have a conversation.
Right.
Thank you, Kelly. Congrats again, by the way.
Appreciate it.
Congrats again.
Appreciate it very much.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch the Today Show every morning on NBC, or take Today when you're on the go. Just follow the Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.